Tricia, thank you so much for being here. What a
Thank you
treat.
for having me. It
Oh
is
my
my
gosh.
pleasure.
I am so happy to have you. You were on the top of my list when decided to do this podcast. And it's so funny because I'd never meant for this podcast to be like a fully like queer kind of podcast, but so far almost all of my guests except one have been queer, which I'm fine with.
I'm also fine with that. That sounds great. Yeah,
Yeah, right? We got to uplift each other and take care of one another, you know?
exactly. We did have that joyful experience doing the
It's true.
Sketchershin
Sketchersons.
show. Sketchershin. One
I
of
know
my
that was the
faves.
first time I met you. It was the Sketchersons, and I was really excited because I don't think we had at that time when I had joined the Sketchersons had like another queer like female identifying person on the podcast or not on the podcast. This is the podcast on this the show. So it was like so fun, and you were so great, and we had such a fun time. We did that "Take Me or Leave Me" opening monologue.
It was so delightful and so perfect. Yeah, I really loved that. It's funny because I used to do a bit of sketch, but not so much in Toronto.
Right.
And it was really nice to do that. Although I had a good laugh because I feel like, for the longest time, and you're right, like I feel like sketch was always super male dominated. And it was always, I always kind of felt like I was like the weird kid sister trying to like worm my
Right.
way into the boys club. And I'd collab with people, but then they'd like, ditch me for the guys. And then it
Yeah.
was really funny because when I guess I gained some notoriety for some of the screen acting I was doing, all of a sudden I was getting asked to do a bunch of sketch stuff. And I was like,
Yeah, right?
I'm happy to be invited to the table, but also, damn it, where was this
Where were
5 years
you?
ago?
Yeah. Where were
But
you when to see your like actual talent? I feel like sometimes people, I don't know, like yeah, once you have like a couple credits, then they're like, "Do you want to do this sketch thing with me?" And you're like, "I was the same amount of talent before."
yeah, but it was so nice to do that. I mean, God, that was actually like 4 years ago now.
Wow,
I feel
yeah.
like we did that together, but
Yeah, it was.
but it was so nice to have like so many women on
Oh
that
yeah.
team, and it was really fun.
Because you've been doing so much in the last like between Carmilla and then you produced Clairvoyant too, right? Like you wrote and starred in that as well, correct?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
co-wrote it and co-created it with my creative partner and a good friend, Annie Briggs, who also stars in it. I met her
Yes.
through Carmilla, and we really hit it off. But then also, we, we wrote that and made that. So
Yeah.
it was really fun to do that. Although it's funny because I honestly like have not been as busy as people think I am.
Right. Okay. Maybe just you seem busy. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's just because I like follow you so much on like all the socials. So it seems like you're busy, but
I used to think that, appearing like I always had places to be and things to do was a good idea. But I think it's actually bitten me in the ass because people are always like, oh, we were going to ask you to do this thing, but we just assumed you'd be too busy. And I'm like, no, please hire me. Yeah,
give me a job.
Carmilla ended in 2017. And then
Oh, wow.
co-created Clairvoyant. We shot that in 2017. That came out in 2018. Been doing some movies and things like that. But yeah, mostly just like, I don't know. I feel like I feel like I turned 30 this year, and I feel like this is a strange time to be an actor, pandemic aside. It's sort of
yes.
that in between where I'm like a little too old to play college age, but I still
Right.
look too young to play like lawyer on TV. Even though if I had just listened to my parents nagging, I would have actually been a lawyer right now.
And when did you turn 30? Did you have a quarantine birthday or was that?
Oh, sure did. Sure did, my friend. I had a full-blown meltdown. It was
Oh no.
great. No, it was very funny. I was actually quite excited to turn 30. Like 20s, love it, had a nice
Yep.
time, learned a lot, absolutely do not want to go back. I feel like unlike most actors, I'm like waiting to age because I think
Yeah.
all the roles that are more appropriate for like my typecasting and personality are just gonna come in my 40s.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm like just waiting to age, chain smoking. Wait, no. I'm just trying to age.
I
But
mean,
yeah, so I
yeah.
was excited to enter my 30s, but also it's just like a weird time to hit a milestone and then not be able to celebrate with friends because it was
Yeah, of
in
course.
early April, right at like peak lockdown time. So, and the weather wasn't great. So I just like I wasn't able to do anything distanced. Definitely tried to dye my hair purple and wax my own butthole. Thankfully, did not mix those two things up.
Oh my God.
And then my hair,
How
it didn't even take. It didn't even take. My hair
didn't
is
even
still
take.
brown, so it
Oh my
didn't.
gosh.
Absolutely. I like the word partnership because I feel like people say it sounds businessy, but I guess as someone who's like identifies as pansexual or bisexual, like I've always used partner because I never like I've just always used it because I've never wanted people to if you say boyfriend, people assume you're straight,
Yeah.
and if you say girlfriend, they assume you're gay, and it's just sort of like. And also, I like the idea of like two whole people coming together, being
Yeah.
being partners.
That is true. I take it back. It is a partnership.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
funny because like all of my longest relationships have been with women, and I always wanted to have like a shirt that said like I'm not gay, my girlfriend is. Yeah.
Why not?
I'd always get that question where it was like, people would be like, "Oh, so like how long have you been a lesbian? I didn't realize you were." And I was like, "I'm not. I'm still the same person I've been since I was out at 16."
Yeah.
But okay, question though.
Yes.
This is a very personal question.
Please.
The tables have turned.
Uh-oh,
Now
now
I'm
you're
asking a
interviewing
personal
me.
question. I'm interviewing
Okay.
you now in typical Aries fashion. I've completely taken over this podcast.
I love
now,
it.
have you? So like, because I was saying, I ended up getting my partner to help me wax my butthole and dye my
Yeah.
hair. So you learn a lot about each other in quarantine. Have
You
you?
do.
Have you farted in front of your girlfriend yet? Because that's the real
Oh,
sign
yeah, like
of the
a
relationship.
long time ago.
Good,
Like
very
a
good.
long time ago, like at the beginning. I think though it was one of those it's embarrassing for me because it was one of those like farts where like I was in bed and I was asleep and I farted in my sleep and it woke me up
Oh,
and it scared me and I think I rolled over and I said, "I'm so sorry, I farted," and then fell back asleep. But it was a big one. I don't know what, like it was like what, because when you're with somebody for like the first month at least, if not longer, you're holding in those farts.
oh yeah. Like for the
You're
first
holding
month,
them
for
in.
sure.
Yeah.
I had a scary fart like that woke me up once, except I was on a plane
Oh no.
and I was
Shit.
seated next to a fan. Like when I first sat down, they were like, "Oh, are you Natasha and Carmilla?" And I was like, "Yes, I am." Neat. Okay. And then I fell asleep and I absolutely was woken up
Oh
by my own
no.
fart. And yeah.
It's kind of charming because then it makes the fan go, "She's just like me."
Geez, just like us. Yeah, maybe. Or actually, it's like, wow, she's not just like me. She's actually like absolutely disgusting. From the time I was a little kid, I always performed. I sang in a professional children's choir, and that introduced me to musical theater. And then I went to a music theater high school for the arts in their music theater
Right.
program. Did a lot of like community theater when I was in high school, but I was being trained more or less and conditioned to be a classical singer. So I used to be an opera singer,
Wow.
and I went to McGill for voice performance. And obviously it was a very competitive program that I was very, very lucky to be in. But through doing that, I realized that I the root of what I wanted to be doing was telling stories. And it was actually a music marketing class that I was in there that we had to audition for. And that class kind of planted that seed, I think, that, opera was a tool I was using to communicate, but it wasn't my favorite thing to do. And at the root of it, what I wanted to do was tell stories. And I started doing a lot of theater and a lot of improv while I was in Montreal. And I booked this show that ended up falling through, but it was supposed to be in New York. So at that time, I was like, you know what, I'm going to get an agent in Toronto because that's my hometown, and I'm going to get an agent before I go to New York. And so I got my agent, but then I started auditioning for a bunch of musicals, and I was flying back and forth, and I had already deferred a semester, and I wasn't doing super well. I wasn't really enjoying my program at all, and I was putting myself through school and in so much debt.
Right.
And so I was like, you know what, I think I'm gonna. I told my folks, I was like, just give me till 25 years old, and if things aren't going well, I'll like finish my degree. But I was like, I think I need to try this and strike while the iron's hot.
Right.
So 4 days after I dropped out of school, I booked my first professional musical, and I did that for a
Wow.
while.
What show? What musical?
It was actually just like an off-Broadway review. It was
Wow.
at the Toronto Center for the Arts. But and then of course, you know, the show lights go out, and then I was like a
Yep.
very hungry barista for a long time, and
Yep, that's
had a
the
million
world
serving
we
jobs
live
and
in.
stuff, but eventually just transitioned to screen acting. And I think ultimately that's what I always wanted to be doing. I mean, I was always an actor, but I was really being pushed into singing, I think, because that's where my best talent had lied. But I I think that you know, it's tricky because music theater had really started to shift into a lot of pop stuff as well.
Right.
And you know, I just was like kind of for the type of voice that I have, I was like very much born in the wrong decade, I think.
Decade.
Yeah. I feel like it's not even like a matter of being correct per se, but just like having a more like empathetic way of
Yes.
thinking as well. Because I think like, I mean, it's like you look at so many straight hetero couples who are cheating on each other and leave. You know, there's that
There's a lot.
stereotype of like, you know, the man leaving his wife for a younger woman or something. So it's like anyone has the capability of doing that. I think it's like your sexual orientation has nothing to do with like your moral character per se. But I totally feel that. I mean, something I've really been trying to learn more about and empathize with too is like bi and pansexual men, cisgender men, because you know, a lot of women are afraid to be with men who've been with men because of also like some internalized homophobia or fear of things. And it's yeah, and it's interesting to just like challenge those gender roles as well, like you know, and understand that even a you know, hetero presenting couple doesn't need to abide by gender norms or societal standards.
Those are
either.
all so like archaic, like the way of thinking a bit, like in that terms of like the man needs to provide the money, the woman stay home. Like it's so like I'm like we're everybody let everyone work. If people want to work, everybody work. Everybody make money. You know, men love to cook at home. Like who cares? Like who everybody share the load. Like we said earlier, it's a partnership. So it's like you're going into partnership with somebody in a loving relationship. Like yeah, I like gender norms is such an interesting thing that I feel like is now being slowly more broken down, which I love because I'm like everybody can like people can do anything they put their minds to. So why do we have to gender everything? Like
Yeah.
we even gender cars. We like
Deodorant.
like things. It's like
Shampoo.
chairs. Like we gender things. It's so strange.
It is. It is. And it's funny because like all of the toiletries and candles and like, you know, quote unquote beauty products that I use are all for men
Yeah.
or marketed towards men. And it's so like even I wear men's cologne and like I
Man.
use men's deodorant and it's just like, but why is it for men? It's so strange. And yeah, I think you're right. It's like we're kind of unpacking that. But also it's like I even have to catch myself. Like I would say as someone who's very, you know, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm definitely very much a cisgender woman. But my personality traits and a lot of the way I operate in relationships, I would say, are traditionally seen as masculine, quote unquote, traits. But
Right.
then I'm like, why are we labeling this as masculinity? It's like,
Right?
well, what is it actually at the root of it? Well, it's my leadership and my dominance and my outspokenness and my assertiveness and you know, perhaps my goals and things that I've wanted are like what people would assume most
Right.
men would want in a relationship. And then I always joke and say that like my current partner is very femme, but I'm like, well, why am I saying that he's femme? It's really that like he's nurturing and parental and
Yeah.
sensitive. But yeah, we joke that he's actually my girlfriend. So,
Well, that's great though. I
but
think that's
yeah,
so
but on
like,
the outside, people wouldn't know that. I mean, and I also
of
have to
course.
acknowledge that now I have all this privilege in the world to be able to walk safely around. I've certainly experienced
Yeah,
homophobic
of
encounters when
course.
I've been out with female partners, and so I have to acknowledge that as well. But yeah, it's been
Yeah.
interesting. I think even in these quarantines to do a lot of introspection and think about those things.
Well, we have yeah, like I say, we have the time now too to do all of that. So it's like, why not just think about it for a minute but be kind to yourself too. Like, don't like, I feel like sometimes people get like such a hate on for themselves if you, and I'm bad at it too. Like my anxiety mostly delves from me feeling internal like anger at myself for doing something wrong, or like if I like, I don't know, if I say the wrong thing, I'm like, why did I say that? Like, I think sometimes we need to be more kind to ourselves too in those moments where we're trying to feel out our internal biases and things, to be like, okay, I did think that, I no longer do. So I have to kind of let that go in the past and move forward with a better mindset. And just
Absolutely.
like, yeah.
And showing that you've made change through
Yeah.
actions as well. And I think like anybody's I mean, obviously I don't think that like if you do make a mistake, we're never owed forgiveness by
No.
anyone we've hurt, and we're
Nope.
never, especially if they're from any sort of marginalized
Mm-hmm.
community. But that being said, I think that folks' inability to acknowledge that people have changed comes from maybe their own inability to change
Yeah.
as well. Like I think a lot of times, my ideas and concepts evolve over
Mm-hmm.
time, and because I've said one thing in a podcast 6 years ago, people are like, well, you said that and now you're a liar or now you're this, and it's like, well,
You're
no,
like, no.
people grow and people do change. And I used to be like very upset and really take it in when people believe something that was not true about me.
Mm-hmm.
It was so frustrating because I'm like, oh, I always try to be so authentic, and I was like, no, this is not me. Why are people misunderstanding me? But eventually it's like you just get older, and I'm like, I have to let it go, and I have to know and trust that like the people who know and work with me know who I am, and you just
Exactly.
kind of
And
like let
people,
it go.
and there's a lot of people in this world who love to make assumptions. Like I feel like we've talked about assumptions a bit in this pod, and I feel like people love to do that for some reason. I don't know why, because I'm like, didn't we all learn that assumption makes an ass out of you and me? Like we know that assuming something isn't always going to be right. Like, so it's like you almost have to like ask somebody, like have the courage to actually like speak to somebody and be like, hey, I was thinking this thing, like, is this true? And then hear it from the other person, because you can hear like rumors, and you can hear like you could read anything and be like, oh my gosh, like celebrity gossip of any kind, and you're like, but I don't know these people, I don't know who the source is, I don't know where this is coming from, like I can't judge a person based off of just hearsay, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. And I think ultimately most of us are just trying not to be assholes, but
Yeah.
I'd like to think that anyway. But also we
Hmm.
all fuck up
We do.
sometimes.
We all fuck
We do.
up.
And I think it's like anybody who thinks they've never done or said anything problematic that's affected some community in some way is 100% lying to themselves.
Yeah.
Like it's like we all have the capability to it's funny, I was going to say we all have the capability to have blind spots, but even that's ableist language.
But
So
yeah.
it's like, yeah, we all have the ability to be ignorant about some community or another. So it's like you can experience homophobia but be a transphobic person, or you could be someone who experiences racism but be homophobic, or you could be very quote unquote woke but then actually use ableist language or disrespect the mental health community. It's like we've all kind of, it's impossible to know everything all at once, but I think it's important to at least make an effort though to educate ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. I
And then
think that's great. And you're doing, you said earlier you're doing a new enamel pins, right? With Butch and Sissy,
yeah, so
correct?
this really cool merch company. It's actually a passion project for her. She does music merch, but she's one of my many fairy gay mothers, as I like to call her.
I love
And
that.
we've done a couple collabs together, and I doodle these things. So I made these enamel pins, just because, like, I mean, first of all, it's work has been almost non-existent for me, and
Yeah.
as I've sort of shifted into, sharing more posts and things like that, I've been sharing some of my doodles, and people really liked this one I did of a little skull that said anxiety. But I also thought it would be a
Cute.
nice opportunity to spread wealth a little bit because I think as I don't consider myself an activist because I think that takes more action than I actually take. I would definitely say I'm an advocate, but I think part of going beyond like performative allyship is just like spreading wealth and money. So it was a nice opportunity for me to raise some funds for a dear friend of mine. She works with an organization that she leads called Adornment Stories, and it's a community and a platform for Black women and femmes and non-binary folks, which provides mental health education and
Oh,
arts and
wow.
wellness training. And we met during a creative writing class we took together and just like really immediately connected with each other's writing. So yeah, we're going to donate proceeds from the anxiety pin. It just felt like a nice fit and something that
Yeah.
I could do because I just didn't really know what I could offer people. So I definitely also just like it's important to I guess like shift our thoughts more about that too. I mean, I
Right.
think a lot of people have like completely rebranded. Again, we're using the
Re-
brand word, the B word.
It's an easy
Re
word to use.
I know,
It's all
rebranded their
encompassing.
Instagrams, but in a way that's like not particularly sustainable. So I'm like, okay, well, how can you continue to be mindful about other people in a way that's still authentic to you? So it's like even like for folks who do want to post that bikini selfie, like go for it, but maybe consider like purchasing your bikini from a Black or Indigenous owned fashion company,
Hmm.
or if you are like doing that travel picture or like posting that summer picture with like a rum cocktail, maybe talk about the history of
Yep.
like the slavery and like where rum comes
Where
from,
rums
and
come from. Yeah.
like just like there are ways I think to just like be more mindful about
Yeah,
how we
absolutely.
benefit from all these like horrible things, and just yeah, do some educating,
I love that.
educate.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. I'm gonna get one of those for sure. I really will. And I'll get the info from you. It will just be on Butch and Sissy, or will
Yeah,
be
it's just on Butch and
yeah.
Sissy's
Okay,
website.
great.
Super
I'll put it in the
fun.
description of the podcast then, so people can
Oh,
go buy
cute.
one. Help.
Buy some
It's
enamel
good.
pins. I love
Yes.
enamel pins.
Yeah, they're.
And I
I
like
used to collect pins as a
doodling.
kid.
Me too, yeah.
Except I put them on, my mom put them on this like big clown. It was like a clown. It was like full height. He was like cloth clown.
What?
And then
That sounds
all the pins.
terrifying.
It was, and I think that's where my fear of clowns comes from. So,
How large was this clown?
like, like I'm 5'3", so it was probably like 4 foot
Oh,
clown. And I don't know where it came from, but it housed all of my pins. And
I
I
don't.
think that's why I don't like clowns, because they were like, you stuck me with a bunch of pins. It was
Oh
probably
my
evil.
God. But you
Yeah.
still like pins.
Oh, I love pins. I love pins. I still, anytime I see a pin, I'm like, I want a pin.
I know. I rarely wear them actually, but I have a cork board that I learned to drive for
I
that
love
reason.
it. I love it. If you could travel anywhere in the world right now, where would you go?
This is a tough question because places I've never been, Japan is absolutely number one on my list. Would really love to go to Japan at some point. But if I could go anywhere in the world currently, like right now, and what I miss the most is New York City.
Oh, yeah.
I spend a lot of time there and I miss it. Like it's crazy. I haven't been there in a year and I miss my friends.
I know New York is great. My one of my best friends lives there right now, and I'm like, I want him to come. I want them to come home because I miss them. But B, I'm like, I want to go visit you in the best one of the best cities in the world.
I know, and it just wouldn't
Love
be
New
the
York.
same.
It
Yeah.
wouldn't, because Broadway's not there. Ugh, so sad. What kind of music are you listening to? What's your like go-to music? Like you're shuffling through your phone. What's your number one?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually like my musical tastes are incredibly eclectic.
Love it.
I listen to a lot of like oldie-timey jazz and
Yes.
Motown and like or like
Yes.
70s psychedelic rock, to be honest, like lately.
Yes.
But in terms of newer musicians that I've been into recently, I'm really into Brittany Howard from
Mm-hmm.
Alabama Shakes.
Oh, her voice is mwah,
Yeah, super cool.
perfection. And it's still that like kind of soulful, like it reminds you like it's like a mix of modern and like that old kind of soulful like music, like Motowny kind of stuff too. Like
Yeah.
it's just that music of the like I don't know. I love music from 1920 until like the end of the 70s is some of the best music ever written in my opinion.
Oh, agreed.
I
Agreed.
think it's all I go to. It's my go-to all of the time is like old music. And I think that's because we used to listen to the AM radio all of the time when I was a kid, which was the best. Uh, okay, it's 2 a.m. What are you watching?
Oh, currently I just finished I May Destroy You, which everyone's talking about,
Oh,
and it's amazing.
yeah.
Amazing. Um, if I am on my iPad at 2 a.m. though, I might be listening to an audiobook or a podcast.
Ooh. Are you reading anything good right now? Any suggestions? I'm trying to read a lot more.
I've been getting really into audiobooks actually. And I used to have such a resistance towards them, but I was
They're
like, well, I guess
great.
that's cheating. I'm not really reading. But I just finished Bad with Money by Gabby
Ooh.
Dunn, and it's like a book based off her podcast, and it was pretty helpful. It was good.
Yeah.
It was good to read.
I like when the authors read the books.
Me
Because then
too.
it feels like really like it's them, and you're like, that's how they wrote it, and I like that a lot. Uh, ooh, who was your first celebrity crush?
Okay, Bart Simpson's babysitter was my first like cartoon crush.
Love that.
I think her name was Laura or
Was that played by
Lauren.
Sarah Gilbert? Is that who played her?
I don't remember.
I
But the
think
one
it
who like
was.
breaks Bart's heart, and she was like so
Yeah.
cool. And it was definitely like one of those moments where I was like, do I want to be her or with her? Don't know. And then like
That happens
also
a
as a
lot.
kid, oh God, this is actually super embarrassing. When I look back, I was like, oh, that's what that was. It was a crush. Because like, you know, as a little kid who was like not exposed to queer identities, you just like have no idea.
Of course.
But definitely like Hilary Duff as Wendy in Casper Meets Wendy. Which
I love
is
that.
so
But that's
freaking
true.
weird.
It is, but it's not. It's like you just that's what you're a kid, right? So like for me, it was Gabby Hoffman in Now and Then. Like I was like,
Oh
I don't know
yeah.
what this is, but I really liked her. She was dark
Yeah,
and
it's like you
that was
don't
great.
know. You don't know. You're like, what is this?
What is this feeling, especially when you're a kid? Because you're like, I don't know. Like I feel like I had so many crushes. I had a crush on her. I had a crush on Lucy from Seventh Heaven. I had a crush on Raven Simone. Like there were so many. There were so many. It was there. Why didn't I know? I mean, I did know, but I was just too scared.
Oh, I know. Yeah, you look back on so many things where I was like, oh, that girl I was really scared of that I thought was cool. I was like, oh, I liked her. That's what that
or
was.
or that idea of like, why did I get so why did I get so uppity about like my friend dating this guy? And I was like, oh, I had a crush on her and I didn't know. Like, you know, it's crazy. It's so wild. Okay, and last question. Okay, I know you're not a big partier, but still, party's just ended. Everyone's going home. Everyone had a great time. You're leaving too. How do you want to be remembered at the party? Like when people are leaving and they're talking, if they were talking about you, how would you want to be remembered?
Oh my God. I'm like, oh, how would I want to be remembered versus how I'm generally remembered? Usually I am someone who is picking a fight or an argument with some douchey guy.
Love it. Yes.
Usually that is how I am remembered. Yeah, like you get two drinks in me and it's like, men, don't
Feisty.
talk to me. Just
Yeah.
don't
No, I
even
mean,
talk to
same with
me.
me too. I'm the same now. Like sometimes I'm like, shut up. Like we don't need to hear from you right now.
I feel really bad because then I feel like I'm always on guard about that as well. Like there was one time I remember I was out like playing pool with my ex-girlfriend and I was wearing a jacket that said feminist at the back. And this guy came up to us and he's like, "Oh, hey, excuse me." And I was like, "Oh, this fucker's gonna like teach us how to
Yeah.
play pool or mansplain it to us or something." Like I was really on edge because like this would happen a lot when I was out with her because it would always just be like, you know, "Oh, you ladies just like haven't had the right man yet." Like we just get all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, and then he was like, "Oh, I was wondering where you got your jacket. My girlfriend would really like it." And then I was like, "Oh." And like I did feel bad. I was like, "Oh, I got it from this place. That's nice." And he's like, "Okay, cool, thanks. I want to like buy it for her." And he just like left.
How do you want to be remembered though?
How do I want to be remembered at a party?
Yes.
I think it's like a very delightful, charming conversationalist.
And I think that you are all those things.
You know, maybe that's how I'm remembered at parties most of the time. I would hope.
That's how I'll remember you today.
Thank you. So nice.
Course.
Yeah. Or like the person who just like completely emasculated the financial dude bro.
Fuck yeah.
The last time I was at a party, that's what happened. And
yes.
I feel mildly embarrassed by it. I think at one point I actually mimed sweeping up fragile masculinity.
That's awesome.
Is it?
That's great.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm a little aggressive. It's honestly
cares?
like a marvel that
I'm sure that person well, I'm sure that person probably has done some shitty things. Like you know, there's a reason why you get defensive with certain people because they're also being defensive, right?
Yeah, it was kind of warranted, but
so whatever. I think it's good, and I think it's brave to stand up for how you feel. So, so thank you for being on this podcast today with me. This has been so lovely.
Oh, thank you for having me. It sure has been lovely. And, you know, it was nice to just hang out with someone, even if it is through Zoom. It's nice to know that there are humans out in the world that I can talk to.
Yes, there are. And I'm always here if you need to talk. You can be on the podcast anytime you'd like.
So lovely.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Where can people find you on Twitter and Instagram, right?
Yeah, people can find me at Nat VANLIS. It's Nat VANLIS, my first and last name, mushed together on Twitter and Instagram. You know, it's a nice combination of really like bullshit, preachy shit about like positivity and mental health, or then just fart jokes. There's really no in between.
Love it. And there shouldn't be in between. And also check out Band Ladies because we're both in Band Ladies.
Yeah,
and the
we
show
are.
is so good. The show is so good. When I first watched it, I was like, this is so well written. It's so well acted. The music is so good.
You're so funny in it. I love your character. Oh, also, can we talk about how I saw your lovely cameo in What We Do in the Shadows, which was also amazing. I just recently watched that, and I was
haven't watched that one yet.
It's Tricia. It's so good.
I should watch that today. I haven't watched it yet. I love that show so much. I was so lucky to just even be anywhere near those people.
So good. So good.
It was so fun. Well, thank you. Yes, I'm so excited. I mean, what I was going to say is I think you and I should collaborate on something sometime. Let's do something fun. That's me.
It's the only way. We'll talk offline, off this podcast. Dun, dun, dun. Ideas are brewing.
Yes. Okay, thanks, Natasha, for being here. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.